Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today, and welcome to today's webinar from our Build Your Career webinar series, Public Speaking, Preparing Effective Presentation Material with Roger Granis. My name is Scott Levine, and I'm the Membership Manager here at the IEEE Computer Society. Each month, we host a webinar on vital business skills that will help you excel at your current job and be helpful at your next job and throughout your career. Topics will be on communication skills, such as today's topic, emotional intelligence, and finding mentors, to name a few. Before we get started, I'd like to address some housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive an email tomorrow, which will include a copy of the slides and the recording. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box you see on the screen. And please do your best to refer to the slide your question refers to. Also, during today's presentation, there will be a few poll questions throughout the webinar. A couple of them will have an answer option of other. If your answer is other, please submit that in the poll and then type your response into the Q&A box. And Roger will, of course, try to answer as many questions as possible following his presentation. Public speaking and effective presentation skills can give you the confidence you need to boost your career. The IEEE Computer Society is packed with resources that can teach you these skills and more. We provide various opportunities to connect with professionals from all over the world, such as our technical communities and our student and professional chapters. We provide resources for career building, such as our jobs board, featuring a number of open positions in the United States, and resources that can that can get you closer to your dream job. Additionally, you can access up-to-date career advice from computing experts by visiting our tech news blog. We'll share more information in the email you receive tomorrow, and you can always learn more at computer.org. As mentioned, joining us today is Roger Granis of the Granis Group, which he formed in 2005. Prior to that, he spent 17 years at Gartner, where he built the Gartner Sales University, which helped grow revenue from 22 million to 850 million. He has also helped launch the Gartner's popular podcast, Talking Technology. Roger holds a Bachelor in Speech and Psychology from Willamette University and did postgraduate studies in theater and creative writing at San Francisco State University. Roger also has a personal connection to IEEE, which I'll let him tell that story, which I believe will come up in one of his first few slides. And with that, Roger, thank you for being here today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Scott. Let's all give a round of virtual applause to our good friend, Scott Levine. He works hard to bring great programming to you all, and I hope I live up to his high standard today. I certainly will try. I've got you in mind. I want to help you get that dream job, have a great life, and have better relationships through what we're going to talk about today. Anyway, welcome. Let's get started to welcome you to Public Speaking, Preparing Effective Presentation Material. You probably have all heard this statistic before from the National Institute of Mental Health, but the number one fear of us human beings is public speaking. I'm just like you. I was really scared of public speaking, really scared. I was shy, didn't have many dates in my youth. And I said, you know what, I'm going to overcome this fear. So I joined the college debate team. And boy, I spent a lot of time walking the halls, very nervous, and getting rid of that feeling. So I bring that understanding and that practice and knowledge to you today to help you be more effective presenters and help you use that fear to your advantage. The great news is, I love this quote from Somers White, a former senator in the United States. He says, 90% of how well the talk will go is determined before we stand up to speak. I'm a firm believer in that. The way to overcome nervousness, gain confidence, is to have really good content. Then if you believe in that content, you worked it through, the nerves they don't quite go away, but you use them to propel you forward. And the fear does get reduced by having really good content. So today's focus is on how to get that content really good. I call it CCC equals C squared. What does that mean? Well, if you carefully craft your content, you will build confidence and gain commitment from your audience more easily. It's so true. So today we're going to look at three things. Number one, some mistakes that I see a lot. I've made them all myself back in the day. Messaging, how to get that message really tight. So you build that confidence, you keep that audience engaged, and you make your point. And then the materials, the visuals that you can use to support that great content. Then we'll have time for questions and answers. All right, Scott mentioned I've got a connection to IEEE, and I certainly do. You all hold a warm place in my heart. I grew up in the San Francisco area. My father was a lifetime member of IEEE. Every month, he would go to the meeting in San Francisco on Monday night. So my mom and my sister and I would have dinner alone because Dad was at the IEEE meeting. There's my dad right there, Ro Granis, over on the right. There's me back when I was a little bit younger. That was taken on his birthday way back when, right before I got the news that I was going to move from San Francisco to Connecticut. So that was a significant moment that I didn't really know at the time. Why is there a picture of telephone poles? Well, I grew up in San Francisco. We'd go on vacations to beautiful places, Yosemite, Carmel, wine country. My dad, because he was an electrical expert selling equipment to the power company, all those connecting electricity from the power plant to houses and offices, he would take pictures of the things that he invented that were held up there on the power lines. So he wouldn't be taking pictures of the Pacific Ocean. He'd be taking pictures of telephone poles. Yeah, that was my dad. An inventor always down in the basement. I later worked for Adam Osborne, who is the inventor of the first computer, portable computer, came in at 23 pounds. I actually worked for his publishing company that he sold to start the computer company. And then, as Scott mentioned, I worked for Gartner for 17 years. So I bring this, this background, this passion to help you. I help people like you in workshops and speaking, doing skill training and influence, presentation, and sales. Anyway, enough about me. I'd like to learn about you. A poll question should be coming up shortly. And here it is. I want to get to know you so I can make this program even more customized to you today. What stage in your career are you currently? Are you a student? A graduate PhD candidate? Are you in the workforce? Are you in an entry-level position, a team lead? Are you supervising others? Are you a senior manager, maybe a director? Maybe you're up in the C-suite. Maybe you are retired. I spoke to an engineering group right before COVID broke out down in Arizona, and about a third of the audience were retired engineers who just kind of wanted to come in, have a day with their old pals and whatnot. So who are you? And Scott, let us know when we are ready to see the results of that question.
Let's give them another couple seconds, and we'll switch to the results screen.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Oh, there they are. So a fairly even distribution. We've got a few more in the team lead, 17%. Students, graduate, fairly. Scott, this is really something. I don't think I've seen such an even distribution of participants in quite a while. Excellent. Great. Thank you. Let's go to our next poll question. It's more around presentations and where you give them. So where do you give presentations? Is it at school? Is it at work to people who work for you? Maybe you're giving presentations at work to peers, or you're presenting to the senior leadership team or supervisors. Maybe you're facing external folks, clients, customers, or suppliers, or other. I'd like to know where do you give presentations?
And Roger, this is a check all that applies question, right?
Yes, it is, Scott. Thank you. Thank you. Check all that apply. It'll be interesting to see what the distribution here is.
And again, if you have, if you select other, please type that into the Q&A box.
Right. Yes.
One of the others was conferences.
Oh, good, good.
And let's pull up those results.
All right, big scoring, almost 70% work at work to peers, to senior leaders and supervisors, and then also to customer, external facing. Again, fairly even distribution. On the low end, suppliers. So really at work, to peers, leaders, and also people who work for me, and some at school as well. That's a nice design, like an arrow pointing to the right. Scott, thank you. We will motor on, and we'll look at some mistakes first, just to prime the pump a little bit, as we say. One mistake I see too much, and I saw this a lot at Gartner when they were training the sales force. These are technical experts, and they do this huge information dump because they know so much. They want to share it all rather than whittling down the essential points for the mere mortal salespeople. So number one, too much information. I see engineers do this quite a bit. All right. Number two is it's not targeted. And it's not targeted because we're thinking too much about ourselves. Gee, if I were in their shoes, what would I want to know? If I were learning this, what would I want to know? What do I need to get for me out of this presentation? So what we need to do is make it them focused, they focused. What do they want? What's important to them? And what do they need to know? It's hard to do, but just putting a little bit of thought into that, maybe talking to some of the people in the audience ahead of time, will help you better target your message. This is the big one I see all the time. I know you're not guilty of this. Tell me that's true. That slides filled with words. So what I see a lot of engineers and technical experts do is draft their talk in PowerPoint slides. Nothing wrong with that, but we don't want to just get up and read the words. We want to move those down to the notes section, put some bullet points up there, and maybe some visuals to make it easier for the audience to absorb. And then the fifth mistake I see a lot is the message is not memorable. So this is taking a good presentation and making it great. How do you make your message stick? How do you keep that audience engaged? How do you hold their attention and Velcro something memorable to their brain so that they remember it after you deliver? All right, so third polling question, and then we'll have a break from polling questions until a little bit later. What mistake would you like to fix? Select up to 2. What mistake do you see yourself making that you want to commit to working on? And maybe you're not making these mistakes, and just put other and say, hey, I just want to see what somebody else is saying about presentations to see if I'm doing okay. If you are making mistakes that you'd like to fix, one, too much information. The other, not targeted. Too me-focused. I'm not really thinking about the audience enough. Slides with too many words, where you write out that script up on the slides. No memorable message. Maybe you're not sure what that means, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Or other mistakes. Again, focused on the materials and the content. No, not so much the delivery. That's another topic. All right, Scott, let us know how much more time we want to give them.
We'll give them a bit more time. The poll question was to be designed to be select up to 2, but you can only select 1. So
okay.
Our mistake, if you can, I guess, select 1. And if you have a second option, type that into the chats.
Thank you, Scott. Which reminds me, I I think a good attitude to have whenever you're giving a talk is it's not going to go exactly as you planned. So the mindset I have is something will go different than you expected. And I say it'll be entertaining to see what it is in this particular talk. So there was one minor, very, very minor, something that was a little bit different, but notice how Scott quickly changed it. I think the worst one I had recently was when my power cord was a little bit loose and it fell out, and the virtual presentation just went dead in the middle of it. That was not good. So that's why every time before I speak, I make sure that power cord is in. All right, Scott, let us know if we're ready to look at those results. All right, slides with too many words. Okay, I'm a Boy Scout. I can't quite do the sign anymore, but I appreciate your honesty there. There we go. Slides with too many words, no memorable message. So we'll really focus on that, those two things, and also not targeted. All of those three are in the same theme. So good news, you're in the right place. I'm happy to report I think I put together the right content for you today. All right, we want you to apply what I'm talking about today to your presentation. So think about something you're about to give, or maybe one that you gave in the past, and apply these concepts to one or both of those talks. All right, okay, that's what I did there. All right, so we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about making your message memorable, audience-focused, memorable, making it stick. We're going to look at three things. Number one, objectives. What's your objective? We'll look at 7 tools of persuasion, and then a nice, easy structure. And I want to point out one thing about the visual on this. I actually just picked this up a couple weeks ago. I belong to the National Speakers Association. I was president of the New England chapter last year. So once a month on Saturdays, we hear a professional give talks. And we had a professional on PowerPoint slides, again, about 2 weeks ago. And he said that if you've got 3 key points to make, instead of listing them vertically, like objective, tool, structure, he said, make them in blocks and make them move left to right. Just easier to read, easier for the audience to absorb. So I actually changed this slide based on what he said. All right, we'll start with the objective. What's the objective of your talk? You probably think about that ahead of time, but really think about it. This is, again, helping you target your content and your presentation to the audience. Is it to inform? Simply give some information, maybe about a new policy. Is it to convince them, to get them to change their mind? Or is it to get them to take action, persuade them to do something, adopt a new policy, approve a budget, implement a new plan, something like that. At work, sometimes as leaders, we've got to inspire, whether you're inspiring leadership to help you with a program, inspire your team. Some talks are to be entertaining. I suspect most of us on this call are not giving entertaining talks, but you can bring in a little bit of humor, tell an engaging story, and that might classify as entertainment. So here are some of the objectives of typical programs that I see engineers make: report results, gain approval, teach a process. I'll bet you do a lot of that. Inspire the team, as we talked about. Maybe you're launching a new program and you want to get people to overcome their resistance, get them to approve it, get them to implement whatever it is you're asking them to do. Maybe it's to deliver bad news, or you're actually in a sales role or a sales support role where you're actually helping sell your services. One of the things that is really important to do to target your message, and it's not easy, is boiling down your key message into one single sentence. What is the one single most important thing you want the audience to know, do, or remember above all else? Now, you can't just sit down and get it right the first time. Sometimes you want to put a draft together, maybe tinker with it a little bit. Then as you work through your key points, you keep going back to refine that message. It's like if you're writing a book or really your presentation, sometimes it's easier to write the intro after you've worked through all the key points you want to make, because you're really developing your thoughts and your key messages, deepening your thinking as you go, and you don't have those key nuggets of insight and that are really succinct until after you've worked through it. So don't pressure yourself to get your introduction just right or your one sentence just right when you first sit down to create your program. Don't put that pressure on yourself. You've got to work out the body of it and then go back later to refine that sentence and fine-tune your introduction. So my one sentence, which we said earlier, is, for this presentation, if you carefully craft your content, you will build confidence and gain commitment more easily. So that's really what I'm focused on today, helping you craft your content so you'll feel more confident and get the audience to come along with you. Speaking of the audience, I love this quote from Henry Ford. He said that if there's any secret to success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as your own. Now, our parents probably talked about that, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or walk a mile in the other person's shoes. That's exactly what we're talking about. Again, easy in concept, but it's not easy. You've got to deliberately think, well, what does the world look like from their point of view? What do they want that I have? Not just from a business standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint. Do they have fears? If we implement this, will it put me at risk? Will it put my reputation at risk? What do we stand to gain as an organization? How might this help me personally advance? So we want to think about not just the logic of it, but also what's happening underneath, the emotional, what's going on emotionally with the person you're presenting to. Let me share a quick story about how I learned the lesson of it's important to see life through the other person's eyes. So this is my humble backyard in the backwoods of Connecticut. I'm about an hour from New York City, but we're out in the woods. The house I lived in is in a small lake community. These homes were built as cabins in the 1930s, so New Yorkers would come up by train, hang out on the weekend, and then go back to the city. They've all been winterized now, but we love the neighborhood. Anyway, we have a dog. We have a fence. You see the fence in the backyard there, and we have a little barn where we keep the cars, and I've got a little workshop out there. So about 10 years ago, probably a little more than that now, back in the days of flip phones, I had to fly to Chicago to do a presentation skills training, much like this, with a bunch of engineers. So I'm walking through the yard. There's a light drizzle. There's a little bit of light from the moon, but it looked like I'm walking through a horror movie, kind of a purple sky, this misty drizzle coming down from the sky. And I'm not awake. It's 4 a.m. I'm heading for the airport. And I'm in the middle of the woods in my fenced-in backyard. And whoa, there is somebody in the yard. I thought I was going to get robbed, put through carved up with a chainsaw. So I screamed for help. Help! Nothing happened. And I pulled out my flip phone. Again, I'm not thinking rationally. I said, hold it right there. And this thing didn't move. I thought, well, maybe that's not really a person. And I tiptoed a little bit closer. Sure enough, it was a person. And I'm dialing 911. And as the police are answering the phone, and I realized who I'm looking at is a woman in trouble. She was soaking wet. And I found out later she had run away out of her house due to a domestic issue and was hiding in my backyard. So when the police said, can I help you? I said, well, actually, I don't need the help. I'm here to have you provide help to this poor woman in my backyard. So when I looked at the world through her eyes instead of mine, I realized it wasn't me that was in trouble. It was her. So, and I'll tell you why I told that story a little bit later. All right, we want, again, put the audience first. We want to think about them. What does the world look like through their eyes? What's in it for them? What do they need from me? What information? What points of motivation do they need from me? We want to analyze how senior they are. So if the folks are a little more senior, you want to get to the point. Don't go into so many details. What is their role? Are they a decision maker, an influencer, or are they simply evaluating what you have? This is really important, the next one. How much knowledge do they have of the topic already? So I mentioned earlier, the Gartner technical experts would come into the sales force, and they would think we need to know a lot, like they're talking to a chief information officer. Well, we don't need that much information, A, and B, we don't understand what you're saying. So you've really got to pick out the key nuggets, put them in plain English, and explain them in very simple terms. You want to think very carefully about how much knowledge does the audience already have, and how much do they need, and how much will they understand. Think about how receptive they are. Are they sitting there with their arms crossed and not really interested? They're resisting? Or are they a little more receptive? You'll approach your talk differently depending on their receptivity. And also, what's their motivation? Again, don't think just about work, but what's personally motivating them. We'll talk about later how emotion, we don't want to just present logical information. All good. We want to appeal to their emotions also. So as I look at you today, and I did my own analysis real quickly, seniority, I figured you are managers or contributors. Your role is in terms of how can you implement this information? Well, you can certainly make those decisions. You're a decision maker when it comes to designing your own content. You're probably somewhat familiar with giving presentations or have cursory knowledge, but you're not novices. I think your receptivity is positive. You're here to learn something. And motivation, you're looking to apply this to, I'll say business, and I mean whatever it is you do during the day, school, business, that kind of thing. All right. So we've talked about identifying your objective, analyzing the audience. Let's look now at tools. We'll look at 7 tools of persuasion. And this is all around making your message memorable, making it stick. And these work. I believe I've been studying this, practicing for over 30 years. These are the top 7. Number 1 is a memorable concept. 30, 30, 30. Okay, so that's got, it's a repeat. The words are all the same. So it's 3, the same word 3 times. This is what our CEO of Gartner used when we were going public. He went on a roadshow talking to investors, getting them to get excited about the stock that would soon be offered on the public market. And he said, here's our plan, 30, 30, 30. And then he had all the details about that. Recruit, retain, record. I used this with a Boy Scout troop I was leading, getting all the adults fired up about what our plan was for the year, how we're going to go about recruiting new people, what our retention plan is, and how we're going to record all the details about how to go on each campout so we weren't reinventing the wheels each trip. Now, we had a CEO from a very big company in the New York area who was in that meeting, and I thought, I will never make an impact on him. And when I said recruit, retain, record, he actually got out a pen and wrote it down. I'm like, yeah, there you go. Another one, an acrostic, engineers always simplify yes. Again, something to bring your message, make it cohesive, make it memorable. I saw this in a local newspaper a couple weeks ago, 30, 30, 30. Okay, look at that. It's even in the paper. You might want to give your program, your paper, your customer pitch a title. Give it a title. We see titles used all the time in history. Operation Dynamo was the Dunkirk. There was a movie about Dunkirk a few years ago. Operation Overlord was the D-Day invasion. Operation Leapfrog was actually, that was what I used in my my business plan when I was launching a podcast at Gartner. This is before the word podcast even started. So we call it an audio news magazine. But I said, hey, this is Operation Leapfrog. It just creates a little bit of sizzle, makes it more memorable. You might want to use a slogan, maybe call that a bumper sticker, drive sober or get pulled over. This is like taking that one sentence that's most important and then make it catchy. You text, you drive, you text, you pay. Vote for tolls, lose at the polls. We had a campaign in Connecticut pre-COVID to put tolls back on the highway, and it was getting ready to pass. And then the opposition came up with this campaign called Vote for Tolls, Lose at the Polls. And it didn't even go to vote. The politicians withdrew the proposal. Maybe a phrase that pays. Those of you old enough to remember the O.J. Simpson trial 20 plus years ago, Johnny Cochran, his attorney, had O.J. Simpson put on a black glove that didn't fit. And he said, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. And that line, I think, was probably the turning point. All right. So catchy phrase, slogan, key concept. Number 2 is have 3 key points. There's something powerful in threes. 1, 2, 3. 3 little pigs, 3 blind mice, 3 musketeers. I don't know what it is, but there's magic in 3. Now, some presentations have 5, 7. I get it. Maybe within each of those, if you've got to make points, you have 3 points within each of those, each of those points. But think about putting things in threes. I've got 3 key messages today. This section's got 3 key points, etc. There's power in 3. So the examples I gave earlier, the first 2 were examples of 3. 30, 30, 30, recruit, retain, record. And the recruit, retain, record, of course, all start with the same letter. My messages today, my outline today is mistakes, messages, materials. Okay, let's see how that was developed. So I've given this talk variations of many times, and I'm always trying to make it better and better and better. So a couple days ago, when I was prepping with Scott, I said, you know what? Let's see if I can make mistakes, content, and visuals start with the same letter, just to make my point and make it more memorable. So I started playing around with it. Well, mistakes, okay, I've already got that. Content, well, messages, content, kind of the same thing. Then I went to a tool, look at the bottom, there it is, the alliteration finder. So alliteration, of course, is starting each word with the same letter. So I picked this up by that session at the National Speakers Association that I attended 2 weeks ago, the alliteration tool. Look at this. I'm doing this 30 years. I'm still learning new things. Go there, alliteration.me/synonym.html. It's a fantastic tool. So what did I do? I typed in visuals, selected the letter M, up popped materials. Actually, I think I already had materials. Anyway, the point is, I think it was the other way. I think I put in content. What letter do you want it to start with? Message or M. So I typed in content, start the word with the letter M. Up came a lot of possibilities. Anyway, I played around with it a little bit, came up with mistakes, message, and materials. All right, look at that. All right, so next, number 3. Again, we're looking at 7 tools of persuasion. Data, research, and case studies. So you're probably using a lot of this, which is great. We're engineers, we're building things, we're working on data, networks. It's got to work well. We've got to make decisions that are grounded in fact, right? No problem. just make sure that we're not inundating the audience with data overload. I attended a conference, it was a sales and marketing conference about 4 years ago. Some friends of mine were putting this conference on. They had started a company spinoff of Gartner. And they said, why don't you watch our speakers? Let me know what you think. I said, really good speakers, really good content. The only problem was all they talked about for 3 days was data, 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 data. It's too much. Interject with a story. Interject with something else. We'll show you some other things to interject with. So just don't overwhelm the audience with too much data. Now, if you're explaining something to an engineer, like how to build a bridge, okay, you're going to stick with the facts and the data, but you might slip in a story about, well, what happened when this other group built the bridge or put in the new security system, whatever it is. So interject a story or something else just to break it up. Stress the new and unusual. So if you've got 5 slides with data, you want to point out something significant so that we're not boring the audience. Help make the abstract concrete through your explanations. So again, 100% data equals dull. Number 4, use a comparison or an analogy. Like life is like a box of chocolates from a movie many years ago. Here's an analogy I like to use in speaking. Hey, we all get nervous before talks. The idea is to use the nerves to get you energized and propel you forward. So I like to say nervousness is like ocean waves. Ride them like a surfer, and they will propel you forward during your presentation. Comparison analogies are awesome. They help make the intangible tangible. They help simplify complex concepts. They help the person understand what you're saying by bringing something unfamiliar and comparing it to something they are familiar with. It helps the audience understand, and they are sticky. One more way to help your message get Velcroed to the audience. All right, number 5. Again, these are 5 tools of persuasion. This is one of the most important. Stories. Stories are the oldest form of human communication. We used to tell stories by drawing pictures on the walls of caves. We used to sit around, not we, but our ancestors, sit around campfires, and we actually still do this, and tell stories. Stories are engaging. They're memorable. They stick. They bring facts to life. They help the medicine go down. Research has been done to prove this. They've wired people with the probes, and they've had them listen to all kinds of forms of communication, and more parts of the brain lit up when they're listening to stories. We are hardwired to want to like stories. We are hardwired to remember stories. We are hardwired to want to hear how the story ends. That's how the TV people get us watching, binging shows on Netflix, Ozark. What's the new one? With the U.S. football coach going over to coach the Ted Lasso. Thank you. Ted Lasso, great program. Got it? So incorporate stories. They are everywhere. So I carry around a little notebook that looks just like that. I like to, I'm old school. I like this. Get out the pen and paper. You can certainly use your phone to, as they say, ink it when you think it. I had an idea last night for a talk. I'm giving a TEDx talk in a couple weeks. I'm like, I better write this down because I won't remember when I wake up. So make sure you jot down those ideas when they come to you, because stories are everywhere. I mentioned earlier, in a technical setting, you can use the story about another customer who implemented this, or another organization and why they selected you over other people. So embed those messages into stories. Here's story formula from one of my mentors, Glenna Salisbury. She's in the Speaker Hall of Fame, one of the most kind, generous people I've ever met, and super generous. Her formula is this: point, story, application. PSA, point, story, application. So if we think about the story about the woman in my backyard, here's how I used that formula just a little while ago. Point, made the point. It's important to see the world through other people's eyes. I told the story about the trespasser. And then the application is, we as speakers, we as presenters, need to see the world through the other person's eyes, through the eyes of the audience, so that our message is on target. I didn't use those exact words, but that's the formula we want to follow. We don't want to just bring in a funny story at the beginning that has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about. It's really important that your stories have a point and they link to your key message, okay? And we need to sometimes make that point, make that connection for the audience. Don't just tell the story and hope they make the connection. Tell them what the point is, tell the story, and then show them how it applies to this particular situation. All right, let's take a break from Roger talking. Let's go to another poll. Here we go. It's around storytelling, and do you tell stories in your presentations? How often do you tell stories in your presentations? Never? Infrequently? Sometimes? Most of the time? Or all the time? And if you've got additional comments about storytelling, how powerful they are, feel free to put those in the chat. And Scott is monitoring the chat for us. I guess the other point is, I don't think I emphasized that enough. Stories from your personal life are highly relevant to business presentations, even if there's no obvious connection. It's kind of like an analogy, helps make that connection. The point of the story, the lesson of the story, is the same lesson we need to learn in the business or school context. Just like my story about the backyard was not a business story, but the point of the story was certainly relevant to the content of our talk today. All right, Scott, are we ready to see some results?
Yeah, I'm going to pull them up now, and just a time check, we have just over 15 minutes left in the session.
Perfect. Great. Perfect. Right on schedule. Thank you. That's my answer, and I'm sticking to it. All right, so we have people telling them sometimes. Excellent. So about a third sometimes, a third infrequently, 22% never. We've got our advanced presenters. Most of the time, 7%. All the time, 2%. So excellent. This helps me feel good. I think if we start, those of you in the infrequently and sometimes, start being a little more deliberate and specific about using stories, that will really help you make greater impact. Number 6 out of 7, appeal to emotion. We as engineers, my father, I understood, it was always about the logic. Aristotle said there are 3 keys to influencing others and being persuasive. Number 1, ethos, who we are, our credibility in the eyes of the audience. Okay. Number 2, logic, logos. We need to appeal to logic. And we as engineers are really good at that. Here's the area that we want to be a little more deliberate about, and that is appeal to the emotion. C.S. Lewis, famous author, said, more truth is comprehended through the emotions than the intellect. In the world of sales, there's an old saying, people buy with emotion and then justify their decisions with logic. So we want to make that emotional appeal. And we do that, as I mentioned earlier, by analyzing our audience. What are their deeper motivations? Is it efficiency? Is it they want to look good? Is it fear of failure? Are they confused and don't want to look unintelligent in front of others? So you want to think about all of those, that underlying emotion, so that you can target your presentation appropriately, and appeal to their emotions to motivate them to say yes. And finally, on our list of 7 tools of persuasion, paint a picture of a brighter tomorrow. What's the vision of tomorrow? If you implement this new plan, this is what life will look like later. We will gain this, and we will eliminate that. A study says that people are twice as motivated to eliminate problems than they are to gain the positive. All righty, so there's our 7 tools. Another key is to just have variety. Don't just use one tool. Have variety. That's what the Hollywood people do. Variety. They keep us engaged. If you've attended other workshops, you're probably familiar with the 4 communication styles. I'm just going to briefly touch on this. There are 4 styles, starting in the upper left with Hillary Clinton. Her style is she likes to receive bullet points and the bottom line. Give it to me quick. Give it to me bottom line. Give it to me fast. Robin Williams, lively. He wants to hear about fun and possibilities. Mother Teresa, gentle, nurturing person, wants to hear about relationships and people. Barack Obama, facts and details, also like Bill Gates. And I suspect a number of you would fall into that conscientiousness quadrant, focused on facts and details. So think about what quadrant you're in. Your blind spot would be the diagonal opposite. So you would think if you're a Barack Obama, gee, I don't want to talk about fun and possibilities. That's just not interesting. But to the Robin Williams of the world, that motivates them. Similarly, if you are a Mother Teresa and somebody's just giving you bullets and bottom line, it's not going to feel very good. So we want to think about softening, making our approach a little more gentle. All right, let's go to structure. Here's the tool for opening your talk. Boats. Give the background, why we're here today. State your objective. Present the agenda. And then let them know how much time we have. That's exactly what I did today. Opening, our number 1 fear is public speaking. Objective, we're here to help you focus on developing really good content so that you become more confident and get people to agree, get that contract signed easier. And here's our agenda. We already knew we had about an hour. So in structuring your message, we want to look at the body of knowledge we have. We don't want to tell them everything. We want to be on target. So we want to pick out the key messages that are important to the audience based on our objectives. Alfred Hitchcock said this: drama is life with the dull parts, the dull bits cut out. So we want to really prune. I had to do this all the time running meetings with sales forces that I work with. Don't bring in too many speakers. It will just put the audience to sleep. You've got to cut out the dull parts. The author of The Little Prince said the same thing in a slightly different way. Perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. So you want to prune. Don't do that data dump. Find the key points. Here's the framework, the structure. Talk about the problem, the situation that is probably queued up in your intro, the boat. Then we talk about the solution, name the solution, and then have 3 key supporting points, and then talk about the value and payoff. What's that vision of the brighter tomorrow? Let's do a quick example. Here we go. So I want you to imagine that the problem is in a particular role in engineering. We have 8 open jobs. Turnover in that role is high. It's 48%. And during our exit interviews, we learn that people are not staying because our PTO, our personal time off policy, is inflexible. Okay? So we've given the problem, and then we're going to say what we'd like to do today is propose a solution that it's called improve PTO and we will grow. And here's how we'll go about doing it. Point 1, point 2, point 3. Point 1, flex. Point 2, fortify. Point 3, fix. So here's our plan to improve retention. We're going to be more flexible with our personal time off policy. You'll give some research and data. We're going to fortify our existing employees, give a case study about a new incentive plan that you maybe a consultant you learned about, told you about, or another company, a competitor, and then maybe give some testimony. Okay, maybe a story. And then we're good. This will fix the problem. Here's how we're going to do it, a step-by-step plan. Here's data to support that. And then the value payoff. Here's that emotional appeal. Boy, if we do this, we're going to reduce turnover by 80%. We'll achieve $5 million in savings. We'll ease the headache of training new people. We will reclaim the #1 spot as the best place to work in North Carolina. Friday happy hours will be happy once again. Now let's see how we appealed to the different styles as we made those arguments. So for Hillary Clinton, bullets, 80% reduction, 5 million savings. Happy hour will be happy again. That's for the Robin Williams. For Mother Teresa, we'll ease the headache of training people and will become the best place to work again. It's all about the people and the relationships. Barack Obama, we laid out a detailed plan. So we've deliberately appealed to all 4 styles to keep everybody engaged and motivated. A real quick word about visuals, and we have another session recorded that you can look at all this in detail, but I want to save a little time for Q&A. Happy to stay a little bit after if we need. Move the script off the slide, put it in the notes section, and then either have a picture with some bullets or just the diagram and talk to it. You can give a handout with more details. Here's an example of the moonshot speech that John F. Kennedy gave in the early 60s, President of the United States. He said, "We will go to the moon by the end of the decade and land them safely back on Earth." So Kennedy did not use PowerPoint slides. So there's a tip. You don't have to use PowerPoint slides for your whole talk. Just turn the projector off, talk to the audience, then turn it back on. Kennedy could have used bullet points. He could have used a picture with bullet points. He could have just put a picture of the entire moon. Notice how your emotion, your mood, your receptivity changes when we go from bullets to just a picture. If you wanted to interject humor, you could have a picture of a cow going over the moon. I work with a team of engineers, safety engineers. They talked about safety in petrochemical plants that are highly explosive. And so this is what the PowerPoint slide looked like. It was just the script up on the slide. And he talked about what can happen, that the whole plant can blow up. So I said, why don't you put just a picture of the plant blowing up? That will help you make your point. So that's what he did. Have one idea per slide. The slide here could be broken into 4. Move the details into the notes section and so forth. If you need to use bullets on your slides, the rule of thumb is 5 by 5. So no more than 5 bullets, no more than 5 words per bullet. Some people say it should be 3 by 3, but I know sometimes we've got to get a lot up there. So the point is reduce the number of bullets, reduce the number of words. If you need to show a detailed slide, just circle the point that you're zeroing in on, and then have one slide with just that particular section. Said another way, you can use call-outs, circles, arrows. Here are a few model visuals. Again, you've got to pay graphics people to do these. Picture of a plane with the points made a part of the plane. If you do need to use words, move the most important words to the front of the short paragraph and then change the color to highlight those key words. You can use the full picture, put the words right up on the picture themselves, like that. Again, this is an example of instead of vertically oriented your bullet points, have your key points go horizontally across the page. Another tip I used, picked up, again, this is Nolan Hames from that talk I attended a couple weeks ago. You can use icons instead of pictures. So icons are more neutral. If you put a person, particular person up there, others might be offended. Oh, where's this person? How come there's not equal representation? So a way to get over that is to just have icons. Anyway, thanks for listening. We've got time for questions and answers. I'm working on a short paper called the Yellow Cake Principle. It's not a presenting, but it's all about influencing others. And if you would like a copy when that's available, please send me an email to roger@grandisgroup.com. Anyway, Scott, available for questions.
Awesome. Great presentation, Roger. Yeah, let's dig into the couple of questions that came in.
And I'd love to connect on LinkedIn if you would like.
All right. I think, yeah, they can see that there. How can I build enthusiasm into delivery of a presentation and carry the audience along?
Right. How can you build your own enthusiasm to bring it into your presentation and bring the audience along? Two things. Number one, pump yourself up before the talk. So I've done a little bit of acting, and one of the directors I worked with said, right before you go on stage, take 5 really fast, deep breaths. And you get this tingle of energy, of oxygen, and then in you go. You could also do a physical warm-up. Walk outside, get some energy going, go to the gym right before you present, loosen your vocal mechanism up. So if you're uncomfortable having people watch that, you step out into the hall or in your office before you go into the delivery. So that's all on the performance, the body piece. On the content, find something that really sparks your enthusiasm. It might be changing bullet points to a picture. It might be finding that story that you want to bring that's got an emotional hook that maybe means something to you and you can connect it to your point. So I think between, again, getting yourself warmed up, get yourself pumped up, and then being excited about your content. Hopefully you've gotten a million ways today to do that. But if you find 1 or 2 things to bring in that really fire you up, you'll be excited about presenting those. And I think the third thing is talking to some people ahead of time who will be in the audience and say, hey, what could make this extra special? Maybe you want to run by your key points, run your key points by them. They might say, too much information there, really like that. So you want to, emphasize, keep the good, shorten the bad, or maybe eliminate it. So hopefully those thoughts are helpful.
Great. And I think this question really sort of relates to that first question. They said they're confident with their presentation, but their heart can race, their mouth gets dry, and take some time into the presentation to sort of gain that control and have the nerves go away. Any tips to avoid that before they start their presentation?
You are perfectly normal. Everybody goes through that. So I think just knowing that helps you relax. The key for me and most people is just practice. Practice, practice, practice. I worked through that even worse than you described, for years. And I just kind of became numb to the audience and finally overcame that. But I think practice is key. You can join a Toastmasters group. You can take speaking classes. You can form an informal team with other students, people at the office. Hey, want to start a presentation practice group? Meet for lunch once a week. I'm doing that. I do that myself. every Friday. We've got a team of folks that I get together with. And then I think finally, again, really good content, especially if you've got something at the beginning that will elicit a response. Either get their attention, if you're naturally funny and it's appropriate and the humor ties directly into the talk, getting a chuckle helps you relax. But if you're not funny and it's not appropriate, that please, and I've learned, you want to avoid that. I think also, referring back to my first answer, having spoken to the audience, one or two people ahead of time, will help you believe in the content when they say, yeah, that's a really good point, or, make that your first point. Or you could say, hey, what do you think about this as an opener? And if they validate it, the other person agrees, validates, that gives you a little confidence, and they're going to be in the audience listening. Now they're your allies. They're your friends. There's usually an ally in the audience. Somebody's usually smiling. But again, meeting ahead of time, making that connection with them might also help contribute to relaxing, along with the other things I said, and certainly practice.
All right, great. I'm going to sort of combine these two questions because they both relate to visuals. Is there a set of color combinations? Are there any that are more effective or receptive to others? And then the second other question that was sent in is, how can they improve their visuals? Is there like a site? Are you taking these from the internet? Is there an appropriate place where they can get all these sort of images that you use today?
Right. Okay. So let's talk about the colors. Yeah, there's a whole science behind colors, what colors mean emotionally. Like I hired a designer to design my company logo and the colors on the website based on input I gave him. I don't know how you'd find that study or that I mean, but you could probably Google colors and their meaning and find that. If you are working for an organization, a nonprofit, a company, the government, it's important to use their color set, there's a word for it, their templates, their it's an easy
brand
way.
guidelines, I think is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, branding guidelines. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, use their branding guidelines, their logo, font, their colors. It's important to be consistent with that. That said, if it's wide open, I would Google colors and their meaning, and hopefully that might yield something. I think the simpler the better. One or two colors. I think primary, secondary, and then tertiary. Don't bring in more than three, and don't give one more weight than the other. That kind of thing. You might be able to. There's a website called Fiverr, Fiverr.com. You hire people for like $5, and they do small projects. So you could hire 3 people to say, hey, I'm looking at using I want to design a look and feel, a color scheme for a presentation on this. Please come back with something. And then you could pick from one of those. Then the other one was, the pictures. I use a website. So first of all, you could Google in public domain pictures, and then pull from there. You can Google free pictures and get free pictures. I use a couple for fee websites. One is 123RF, like RogerFrank.com, 123RF.com. And so I have bought a lot of pictures there. And there's another one, I think Shutterstock. Shutterstock.com. They're a little more expensive, but then they've got lots and lots of pictures, and it's a little bit of money, but yeah, they've got lots and so forth. Hopefully that answers that one.
Yeah,
Love
I
the
think
questions.
so. Let's see. The next one is on hand gestures. Is there a way to sort of manage it and so it sort of looks more controlled and not sort of everything is just sort of flying around?
Yeah, I've gotten feedback that, Roger, you sure use your hands a lot. Hopefully I wasn't flying around, but I like to use my hands, and I don't get complaints, so I just keep doing it. This gets to a bigger question, which is, how should I look? Where should I stand? Where should I move my arms? My feeling is this, and this has been validated by all those professional speakers I hang out with. It's be yourself. If you're naturally using your hands, use your hands. If you're naturally energetic, be naturally energetic. Be the best version of you, and don't try to be somebody else. Now, when I'm teaching presentation skills workshops, I give some general guidelines that if you're on camera, the hand should be in the frame. If you're in person, they should, be within the power zone, kind of like from your belt up to your shoulders in that power zone. But whenever somebody start moving them too deliberately, it starts looking fake. And people are craving authenticity these days. So I think it's better, in general, to be yourself. That said, if you're giving a talk in person or online, ask a friend who's going to be there. Say, hey, were any of my words or non-words or gestures or movements distracting? Were they, wild? I forget the word you said. But get some feedback from them. And again, the rule of thumb is, unless it's a major distraction, don't worry about it. And the same is true for non-words like, human beings naturally use those words, those non-words, in normal course of speech. But, so don't try to weed every one of those out. I think in Toastmasters, they require that. But Rogers says, just be you, be conversational. And if it becomes distracting, based on that feedback from a friend, or maybe you videotape yourself, just let it go. Maybe 5% of the time when I'm in a presentation skills workshop, I'm pulling one person aside saying, hey, you know what? You said at the end of the day too many times. It just, you gotta really be conscious and prune that back. But all the other time, the 95%, I want people to feel confident and comfortable, and they're worried about where they're moving their arms. And, did I say, they get stuck in their head versus making that connection with the audience. There's another cool, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
All right, no, Roger, you finish up that thought.
Yeah, there's another quote I love. It's by Michael Caine, actor, English actor. You don't see him much these days, but I think he's Academy Award winners. He's Sir Michael Caine, English guy. He says, rehearsal is the tension, performance is the relaxation. So put your work into the content. Maybe practice a little bit. But when you go in front of the audience, just forget everything and just connect. And just, you know the stuff. Let the slides cue you up your next thought. Don't get hung up on, I meant to say it this way. Oh, what? How was I going to say it again? And then you start tripping over yourself. So I love that quote. And it's even good to put a little time between your last practice or the last time you looked at the slides and the actual delivery. Because if you practice right up to the minute, you're presenting, you stand out there and you go, oh, wait, didn't I just say that? That was in your rehearsals. You need a little break so that you're going out, starting this new connection, this new presentation with this new set of people from the beginning.
All right, excellent. I think we'll end on this one last question. I think this sort of relates to what you said about being authentic, and I think this will circle back to where we goofed on the poll question, and it was supposed to be select multiples and just select one. Can you talk more about how to act in case of? He said they say accidents on stage. I think they mean probably mistakes. You trip up on your words. There's an error on a slide or anything like that. And any tricks to sort of more or less probably add your lib way through the mistake.
Yeah, it's something I said earlier. I think it has to do with it has to do with your attitude. So I've made so many mistakes. I've seen mistakes. Two things. One, the audience wants you to succeed. They want you to succeed. And another acting instructor said to me once, walk out on stage and receive the energy from the audience. Now, it sounds like something in California, and it was. But we're nervous. We walk out. We're kind of, no, open up, feel the love. There's energy in the room. Use it. Open up, let it in. Number one. Number two, attitude. Something, as I said this earlier, when we had the polling. Yeah, right, Scott, you just referred to that. We were supposed to have, you can answer two. Oh, you could only answer one. So that was the time in this program where something didn't quite go as according to plan. The other one was, I couldn't remember what was the graphics term, Scott, that you had? The
branding guidelines.
Branding guidelines. Now, I hadn't planned to say that. I haven't used the term branding guidelines in a while, so I hadn't forgotten what I thought about yesterday. I just couldn't think of it. It's like, oh well. In a situation like that, go to the audience. I'm trying to think of what's the term, where you've got the templates. Oh yeah, thank you. Branding guidelines. Let them answer. The audience is there with you. Now, if something big happens, like happened to me, the power cord came out and the thing went dead. All you can do is get back online as fast as you can and then have a sense of humor about it. The power cord was attached, but it's a magnet, so it came a little bit loose. I think also preparation is key. If you know the material, you've honed your message, and you have this attitude that it's not going to go exactly as I wanted, and it probably shouldn't, because if you can see the audience getting restless, you might want to ask for some feedback. You might want to, speed up. Maybe don't go into as much detail. What else? There's a whole book called What to Do When on the Platform, and it's filled with all kinds of examples of what can go wrong and then what your response might be. Probably don't need that much information, but it's a topic that's been thought about, and one of those books over on the shelf is that book. The old classic line is, if you trip and fall, you either say while you're lying down, you say while you're lying down, I will now be taking questions from the floor. There you go.
Very, very nice. Thank you, Roger, for that excellent presentation, and thank you, everyone, for attending and submitting all your great and thoughtful questions. Before we wrap up, just a quick programming note. Our next webinar from the series will be 2 weeks, which is the Build Your Career webinar series, will be 2 weeks from today on April 7th at 11 a.m. Eastern, and it's 5 to Thrive in the Workplace. The Computer Society will be doing 2 additional webinars over the next couple weeks. Our most immediate or next webinar is from the Distinguished Lecturer webinar series on quantum computing, which will be on March 31st. And the other webinar is from our standards webinar series, which will be on deep learning on April 5th. You'll be able to register for all of these webinars using the link you'll receive in tomorrow's email with the slide and recording of today's webinar. Again, I want to thank Roger for sharing all his great insight and knowledge with us, and all of you for attending today. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.